Hi guys, we're going to do another project. This is our very first one, which is the HelloWorld project that gets you on your way to being a coder veteran. I guess it could be if you keep at it for a few years. So anyway, let's have a look at the project. I'm going to start by clicking on New Project in Visual Studio. I'm going to choose WPF application as the type application I want to do. And I'm going to call the project HelloWorld. In a few moments, Visual Studio is going to take me to the editing controls, so I can see now that my window's opened up. And we've got our controls here on the left-hand side in the toolbox. Now I've got a few more controls perhaps than what you might have on your computer because I'm using my home computer here. But I'm just going to stick to the standard controls, which will be the same as what you've got in the classroom. So I'm going to double click on the button that's appearing here in the toolbar. That puts a button here on the window, and I'm going to rename that button because it's a great idea when you're first starting out to get in the habit of actually naming your controls. You'll find out later on when you learn a bit more about programming how useful it can be when you're looking at your code. So by default our button's been created and called button 1. I'm going to change that and just take out the 1 and rename it button hello. And I'm doing that down here in the properties window. Now if you haven't got access to the properties window, if you can't see it on your computer, try right clicking on your button and say properties and it should appear. Okay. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the content for the button. The content is basically the label of what you see actually written on the button. So I'm going to change that to Hello World. Okay. Well, that's it as far as the user interface is concerned. We're only going to have one button, and that's all we need to get this project up and going. Now we need to actually work with what's called the event. The event is what does the button do? And the most common event for a button is, of course, when you click on it. And that's what we're going to take advantage of. Now there's a shortcut for getting into the click event in Visual Studio for buttons. And that's simply to go to the button here on the window and double click on it. That'll take you to what's called the code view. And you'll see that it's created some code for us called button hello underscore click. And it's put the cursor between this left and right curly brace. What Visual Studio is trying to tell us is anything we write here, any code we put in here, is actually going to be run when we click on the button. What we'd like to do is actually bring up a greeting or a message box on the screen to say hello to the world. So let's get started. I'm going to take advantage of IntelliSense, which is a feature built into Visual Studio. We're just starting to type the word message box. Now you'll notice I haven't finished typing it, and what's appeared below where I'm typing is a list of all the options that Visual Studio thinks I might want, and it's actually selected message box here and highlighted it. So I'm just going to press the tab key, and that fills it in automatically for me. It's a great idea to get in the habit of using IntelliSense because IntelliSense also takes care of one of the challenges of learning to program, which is capitalization. C# actually does care about whether you're using lower or uppercase letters when you're typing words like message box. And if you get it wrong, it's not going to let you continue. So by using IntelliSense, it gets filled in with the correct capitalization. You don't have to worry about it. Now, message box has another part that we need to know about. If I put a dot in, you'll see what it is. And that is that we can choose, for example, that we'd like to use the show feature or function of message box. So I'm going to select show. Press tab again. Now we're told that we're going to create a message box and we want to show it. Of course, what do we want to show? Well, with a lot of different functions you're going to be using inside Visual Studio, you'll find that what you need to do is put a bracket. It's just a normal left bracket I've done here. And we get another type of IntelliSense that comes up. And it's saying, well, it thinks we're doing a message box, which we are, and it's suggesting that we might want to enter in the message box text. It's also saying that that text should be in the form of a string. Now in programming terms, when we see that, the string reference, that means that whatever we put in should be in quotes. So what I'm going to do now is type in our greeting, which will be hello world, and you'll notice that I've put that inside quotes. Now of course, your message box could be a bit more fancy than just saying hello world if you wanted to. And I can tell that we can do that because over here it says on the IntelliSense that this is only one of 12 possible variations of the message box. If I want to see what some of the others are, I can just simply click on these arrows and go through the list. There's quite a few of them, but this one here, number 6, is probably my favourite because it not only allows us to put in a message, it also allows us to put in a caption. That's what appears at the top of the dialogue. It also allows us to choose what buttons we'd like to see, and finally allows us to choose what kind of icon we'd like to see on their dialogue. Now all those options are going to make a lot more sense once you've seen the finished project. So just bear with me and type along and do what I'm doing here. So I'm going to put a comma in next, and you'll notice IntelliSense has selected the string caption. So it wants the caption that will appear at the top of the dialogue, and it expects it to be a string. Remember I said when it's a string, it's got to be in those double quotes, so I'll do that. And I'm just going to have a caption of greeting. Now I'm going to put another comma in, and we come up to the message box button. So I'm going to start typing message box button, and again IntelliSense selects it automatically for me. That's what I want, so I'm just going to press the tab key. I'm going to put a dot, and then it's going to ask me what type of buttons would I like. So I can have an OK, OK cancel, yes no, or yes no cancel. This is going to keep it simple, so we just want an OK button for this one. So I'm going to use the down arrow key to select the OK and press the tab key. Next we'll put another comma in, and it's going to ask us what type of image or icon would we like for our dialogue. So I'm going to start typing message box image, press tab, put a dot in again, and I think for this one we're going to use the information one because it looks pretty cool. So I'm just using the down arrow key to select information and press tab. So that's the message box. Once you've done it a couple of times it gets a lot simpler. But there's one very important thing that we have to put on the very end of our line. We need to tell Visual Studio and the compiler when it runs the program that we've got to the end of the code that we've written. And the way we do that is by adding a semicolon to the end of the line. That just tells us that we've now got the complete line that we'd like the program to run. Okay, so we've got our button, we've got our code in. How do we get it to work? Well, there's a couple of things we can do. If we just want to see if the program is understood by the compiler, that there's no sort of errors or things that we might have accidentally put in there, we can try by pressing F6. And if all goes well, down towards the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you should see build succeeded. That's telling you that the program couldn't see anything wrong with what you typed. Doesn't mean you typed the right thing. You might, for example, have written a program that doesn't make a lot of sense because it just does silly things. But as far as the syntax is concerned, that is the things you've actually typed in, it looks to be okay. So my program's succeeded on the build, so I'm pretty confident about this one. So I'm going to press F5 to actually run the program. And there's our window, and there's my HelloWorld button. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And there's my dialogue, my message box. I can see the captions appears at the top here with greeting. I can see the message box button appears here with OK. My message box image appears here. This is the information image. And this is the actual message that I wanted to print to the world. And that's it. You've written your very first C# WPF application.